Well, hello, everyone. A warm welcome to you wherever in the world you are. If we haven't met yet, I'm Sandra Champlain. I'm a long time explorer of the afterlife, also an explorer of grief and why it has to hurt so bad. And I've written a book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. It's almost 10 years old now. And I am the host of two pretty big podcasts about the afterlife with well over 400 episodes. And along my journey, about 5 years ago, I met Scott Milligan. And I was amazed by the form of mediumship or the kinds of mediumship he represented. And he and a spirit team quickly became friends and very, very close in my heart. And I knew, and I didn't know how, but I needed to spread the good word and spread his teachings and spread what he's learned from his almost 25 years experience. And so we did some live events and we had done a few online events, never expecting that the virus would hit and that we would turn everything online. And so for the past almost 2 years, it'll be 2 years in May, that we've been doing a Monday class called Trance in the Altered States. And new students come and go, and many of the people stay the same. And it's a beautiful opportunity to understand trance and the love of the unseen world, whether you want to be a medium or not. It's really wonderful. This month, we had an extra Monday. So something that's been kind of gnawing at me is, in a good way, when Scott shares, he's got so many stories from his experiences that to me are just miraculous. But in the course of a classroom, we never have time to hear them because, we're learning and we're developing ourselves. So we thought with this particular Monday to just do something special. And his stories are his treasures. And you saw us on the slideshow, just some of the pictures that I've collected from being with Scott, and some of were his pictures as well. And I know that you saw at the very end his kitties and his bunnies. And many do not know that poor Scott and Darren have incurred a huge amount of medical bills for their bunnies. And I tell you, any one of us that have pets, we know they are our children and we feel love closer than some people. So we have decided that this is a fundraiser and the proceeds are going to help Scott and Darren with the medical supplies and the medical bills. And I know times have been tough for all since COVID hit. So Scott, as a gift to you, it's not really a gift you can keep because I know it's going to go to the doctors, but we want to make this occasion for you and Darren, and so you can take care of your fur babies. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And ladies and gentlemen, whether you're watching the replay of this, watching this live, there is a link to PayPal, and that's Scott's PayPal link. It's called Morningstar. And if you want to give a couple extra bucks, you can feel free to do that. So we thank you for being here. And these little critters are going to be alive a little bit longer because of your love. So over to you, Scott.
That's really, really kind of you. And it's kind of knocked me from my stool, if I can put it that way, because anyone who has animals know that the deep love that we have for them. And we rescued one little bunny called Belle, who was abandoned in a shed, and it was her first Christmas. And unfortunately, someone set off fireworks and caused them to go into what was called gut stasis, where their guts shut down, and it can be quite fatal. And we had to intervene very, very quickly. And I'm happy to say that she is bouncing around our kitchen at the moment. So she is getting better. So, and she was the last one you saw, and that's why I was watching the slides, and I was thinking, why are we going to the bunnies and why are we going to my cats? And now I know why. So that's deeply touching. And as I said, it's just knocked me from my core. So let us just begin by welcoming all of you And hopefully whatever will transpire this evening will be what is needed to be shared, but also needed to be heard as well. And hopefully you and I are going to retrace our steps and find a place where you and I can meet. And now those who know me know that I'm a very logical and rational dude. And I am someone who is very highly skeptical, because I think that's a very good grain to have. But I've gone from believing to knowing. And everything I will share with you tonight, I don't expect you to believe a word until you experience it yourself. Some of you I have had the privilege of meeting. Some of you I'm excited to meet, and some of us will meet in the unseen. But I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart to support the subject. The subject is communication, and we are peculiar, you and I, because we are able to sit still and listen to sounds beyond the sounds, and these sounds replicate a voice that some of us may recognize. I think something very cruel can happen in life, and that is death. And people who have no understanding of what death is, when you're dead, that is it. You're in a box and you're in the ground, or you are cremated. And that really does trouble me. And I have been fortunate enough to have a suspicion, which has then led me to a place of investigation. Now, would you believe that this will be my 25th year of investigating, but being lucky enough to sit within the confinements of a very normal room and have a group of strangers that over time become friends. And from friendship, we have been able to face death and become friends with death. And from that friendship, we have been able to give those who are voiceless a voice. Now, before we continue, and you can say, Scott, you're weird, and I would love you for it, I want you to allow me just to give you my interpretation of the subject that I've loved. One is trance, which is a blending of mind, a mind that had walked the earth, not some kind of fanciful person, but someone who has walked the earth and has proven their existence. And through direct thought and concentration, they are able to subdue my thoughts and speak with me and through me. It's different to channeling. Channeling can represent soul, but trance for me is working with a discarnate mind. The next step from that is physical mediumship. And physical mediumship is one of the subjects that is so close to my heart. I'm quite vicious and ferocious with it to protect it and make sure that it's done in the correct manner so that we can sweep the path, not only for our friends, but for the future physical mediums that are going to find it much more easier, because hopefully that we are being born in a time where people recognize the subject. But physical mediumship is what it is on a tin. As a mental medium, we stand and we represent your loved one. And through our senses, we bring them to life by giving you information. And then when you say, yes, I understand that, that becomes evidence of survival. And it's the medium that is experiencing the voice of your loved one, the face and the touch. They are able to create the atmosphere for you to say, that felt like Dad, or that sounds like what my mum would say. But with physical mediumship, we take it a step further. We are not gifted, we are actually defected, as my friend in the spirit world would say, which then keeps our ego under wraps, that we are able to sit there and for some reason dribble and break wind and then hopefully fall asleep. And as we fall asleep, our bodies produce an energy or a gas, which then is in turn into ectoplasm, which sounds something from the Ghostbusters, but there is a backstory to the Ghostbusters, which Sandra can share with you later. But we produce this substance, which has been analyzed It has been investigated by a number of parapsychologists and very well-respected people within the field. And the spirit people temporarily step into it. And as they step into it, the invisible become visible. The voiceless find a voice. Those who don't seem to be able to touch you can manifest their hands, including any imperfection on the hand, and hold you and grip you. When I say about imperfections, that we did a seance a little while ago, and a lady's husband came through who had kind of knocks on the knuckles, like growths. And as the hand held her hand, and as she put her fingers in between his fingers, she felt the knocks and lumps, which then convinced her that this was the hand of her husband. But then it was backed up with information that the husband was able to recreate to the best of his ability in his own voice. Now, physical mediumship is a diamond with many facets, and each of that facet makes the diamond whole. We can have independent direct voice, we can have manifestations, we can have the simple things as table phenomena, but it is all under that banner. So when people say to me, oh, I'm a physical medium, yes, you are, but we don't know what degree of your ability until we sit and give you the strength and the opportunity to blend. And hopefully that we're able to rest your mind enough so that you are able to represent those in the world we call unseen. So physical mediumship to me is something that is very, very tasty, very, very beautiful. You know, something this delicious has got to be fattening. And I was very lucky that every night for many years that I sat with normal people who sat there with a normal circle and closed their eyes without any fuss. We had the knock-ins and raps that indicated to us that our friends are ready and we are ready to listen. So will you come on a journey with me? And would you allow your imagination an opportunity to fall in love with the words that I share with you, and hopefully encourage you to sit and to investigate? But if we could step back in time just for a moment and go back to when I was 15, 16 years old. I was just coming into my 16th, and being someone who had longer hair, bigger glasses, skinny as a rake, but wore really baggy clothes. And normally the clothes were black. And having an opportunity to investigate some weirdos, some weird people sitting in a room. And you've got to remember, at the age of 15, everyone seems to be a bit strange. Because when I went into the room, it was like God's waiting room. It was, everyone was of silver hair, mature age, but everyone was respectful. And to sit next to someone who just said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, of course I am, being a fine specimen of the man I was. And having another lady next to me who had warm hands. And that's all I can remember, having warm hands. And this gentleman walked in, and he had long hair, and his name was Colin. And he was going to demonstrate his unique ability. Being someone who knew nothing on Monday and knowing something by Sunday, it was a very rapid introduction. And I was allowed to sit in this room, and I'm very much open-minded until the door is shut and locked and sealed, and then the white light goes out. And I thought, what on earth is going on here? Because there was a red light in the center of the room. And seeing the man Colin being tied to a chair, I thought, what have I got myself into? What's going on? Because no one explained to me what was about to take place. And I think sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, that is the perfect place to be. If we are told, we have expectation. If we are not told, we have freedom just to enter it. So seeing him being tied to a chair, and I'm asking the lady next to me, what are they doing? And they said, just be patient, you'll see. And all of a sudden, the lights went out. And I think all you can hear from me is someone hyperventilating, because I thought, what on earth is taking place? And very quickly, we opened in prayer, and then we started to sing. And if anyone knows me, knows that I can't sing for anything. My mouth just moves and nothing comes out. And I thought, this is what we do. And very quickly, we started to sing Drunken Sailor. And then the moment we started to sing Ooh Ray and Up She Rises, everything started to take place. A luminous cone, which is known as a trumpet, was placed within the center of the room, and that went up in the air as quick as anything towards the ceiling. And bear in mind, I was probably the tallest one in the room at that moment, of being 6'3". And I was a fine specimen, and I grabbed the people either side of me and dug my nails in really tight, and I basically screamed. Fine specimen, and if my mother is watching, she'll be incredibly proud of me hitting those high C's of screaming. And as I'm squealing and making all this noise and fuss, the lady next to me says, "Is that you, Charlie?" And the trumpet stopped, and it indicated yes. Said, "Charlie, I'm so excited, it's Scott's first time." And you hear me on a recorder saying something quite rude to the lady, saying, "Please don't bring any attention to me," which I won't repeat. And this voice manifested, a voice that I heard and everyone in that room heard. And this voice said, "Is it Mister? Let me get my feet." And you heard two thumps, and then you heard a very fast-paced footsteps towards me. And without a hesitation, this tiny, small, warm hand gripped my hand and shook it and said, "Nice to meet you, mister. You got big hands." And he kicked my feet and he said, "You got big plates and all." And then he walked back towards the cabinet. And as he walked back in where the medium was sitting, literally quite quickly straight after came this gravelling voice of an old man. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alec Guinness." And you can hear me on a tape recorder saying, "Who the bloody hell is Alec Guinness?" And he said, "Young man, I was always known as Obi-Wan Bloody Kenobi." And as someone who likes to joke when they're nervous, I said, "Oh my God, the force is strong with you," which was met by the room of silence. So I felt as popular as a breaking wind in a very confined space. So from that moment, I started to realize there was something that happens when we die. These people were very natural and very normal, and were very, very kind to the weird person that's just joined the circle. At the end of the demonstration, when the voices started to wind down, the medium who was bound in the chair lifted with the chair about a meter off the ground and floated across and landed directly in front of me without touching me at all. Again, as the big bang happened when the chair fell, I screamed and I was told to be quiet. When the light came on, can you imagine the cartoon drawing of someone running towards a wall and breaking through the wall and just having a silhouette of themselves? That was me. The fears and doubts that I had an hour and a half ago had all changed, and never again did I feel fear when I come to meet our friends. So many people are scared of the idea of the dead, and I actually think they're the best friends we'll ever have. They never abandon us. They were always there to listen, because I like to talk a lot, as you may find out in the next hour or so. But these wonderful people that have left their mark upon our hearts were real. So this was my brief introduction. There was more to that story, but I don't want to bore you. But let me tell you about the development of the wonderful medium of Colin Fry, the medium that changed my life, and also the gentleman that helped to build his confidence so that he was able to sit and become amazing. But he was normal. He smoked like a trooper. He swore like a sailor. He was funny to the point that your stomach would hurt from laughter. But when it came to him to work, you saw a change within him. And his friend Magnus, a control, a spirit guide, if you will, would take over, and then he would then speak. Colin was an extraordinary man from a loving family. He had a brother called Glenn, a mother called Mag, a father called Arthur, who lived only 5 minutes from my house. And he was interested in mediumship, as some of you are who are watching me now. But his true vocation, his true calling happened when he worked as a carpet fitter, as a manager. And as he was working one day, a husband and wife walked in, and they were very dismissive of Colin at that time, but they were picking out red carpet with a hint of black inside. You can just imagine now, very tasty, very gorgeous at that time. And he had, at that moment, a very deep green sofa. So can you imagine red floors, green sofa? You can picture it, lovely. And they picked out the carpet, and they needed someone to measure up and lay the carpet. And Colin saying, well, my shop is only a few minutes away from your house, I will come round. As he got round to John Austin's house, which was at 25A Marina Avenue off of Wish Road in Hove, John invited him in, and Geraldine, his wife at the time, put the kettle on and said, would you like a cup of tea? And Colin said, yes, please. And was led then into the front room. As he was measuring up the floor, John turned to him and said, we hold seances here. And seance seems to be a very spooky word, but seance means meeting. We have meetings here. Are you interested? And Colin said that he was interested in communication. And John then indicated to him that him and his wife would sit frequently for table tilting. So they would place a hand on the table, and the table would move and lift and do extraordinary things. And Colin would like to attend on the Sunday. Colin said, I don't know what possessed me. I just turned around and said yes. So Sunday came, he went into the front room and placed his hand on the table, and the table started to move. And as it moved and rocked, and as John was encouraging our friends to keep the communication going, John said, could you rock to the strongest medium? And the table rocked to Colin. Prior to that, it would always rock to John. And John smiled and said, I've been waiting for you. Within 21 weeks, 21 hours of just sitting in a very basic room with a group of people and learning to sing in harmony, they had the first manifestation of a loved one. They opened up the door and allowed the public to come in and sit with Colin. He was a very progressive medium, and I don't think he reached his zenith fully, but he definitely touched many, many lives. Colin asked John, how did you know? And John simply said, many years ago, over 30 years, I've been sitting with my wife, week in, week out, day in, day out, building up a power for our friends, not wanting, not asking, but just being there. Prior to that John had a son called Howard, who passed to the spirit world through a train crash. And some of you may relate that you are listening to these words because someone that you have loved, maybe a child, a brother, sister, mother, father, aunt or uncle, and the list goes on. Transitioned maybe through an accident, maybe through suicide, maybe through natural causes and some unknown. And now you're investigating to find out where they've gone. Are they still there? And John did the same, and he went to Belgrave Square in London, and he went to a demonstration with the wonderful medium Doris Fisher-Stokes. And Doris Stokes at the time didn't like anyone late in their demonstrations. And as John and Geraldine were a little bit late and they were walking down from the back of the congregation to the front, Doris Stokes stopped her communication and pointed to John and gave him 38, 39 names of his family and said, one day the trumpets will lift and the dead will walk again in your front room. Go away and work at it. So they started to sit, and they were introduced to a lovely man called Leslie Flint. And that name may cause resonance with some of you, and it may be a mystery to others. But Leslie Flint was an independent direct voice medium. He was a physical medium, but he didn't like the idea of the spirit people materializing from him. He was happy that they created their voice to be heard around him. And at Christmas, to do a Christmas tree seance, which we'll come to in just a moment. As they went to see Leslie Flint and the lights went out and Mickey, his spirit friend, came to talk, Mickey was talking about Brighton and talking about them moving down there. And John said no. And as he turned to Geraldine, John's wife, and said, you've got a lot of power there, Duck, he turned around and said, there's a boy pushing forward. And she said, is it? And then all of a sudden the voice said, hello, Mum. Hello, Dad. And you heard Geraldine gasp and said, is that you? He said, yes, Mum, it's Howard. He was able to identify himself by giving his name and so spoke for almost 15 minutes of evidence and of love, of reminiscing and giving advice. He said, Dad, they're talking about Brighton. And at that time, John lived in London. Dad, they're talking about Brighton. And he said, Howard, you know what happened in Brighton. And that is where the train crashed and Howard lost his life. He said, no, Dad, and nothing to do with that. They're talking about Brighton. And John was relocated down to Brighton. And that's when the circle started to cement itself. But what was more extraordinary, that Leslie Flint then also moved only a couple streets down. So Leslie and John and Geraldine maintained a friendship. And through other people, the friendship got stronger. John always spoke highly of Leslie Flint, of the quality of his mediumship. And if you ever got to speak to Leslie, be it through a seance or in real life, you would probably back me up and say that he was just a very ordinary man with an extraordinary capability. But he always said it was nothing to do with me, it's to do with them. How humble must that be? Some of you must have met mediums whose egos are as big as Christmas. And there must have been times where my ego is always hungry but never full. But to have someone humble, and Leslie would never deny a sit-in, no matter what time of night it was. He used to have people knock on his door at all hours, grief-stricken people, before Facebook had even existed or the internet had even existed, saying, can you help me? And he said, well, come in, lovey, let's see if what we can do. He never promised it would happen, because no medium on earth can say, I will get your son, because we never know who wants to talk. And if any medium says that to you, walk away, because each time we sit is an experiment where you and I would just meet. So Leslie became part of John's commitment to ensure that everything that he does for Colin and whoever else follows, we get it right. Have you yourself been frustrated about your development? Have you yourself wondered what will happen today or tomorrow when you sit? John would simply smile and say, that will be then. Let's just sit and see what we can do now. And he instilled that in Colin, very much so. And they had communication where they were given opportunities for experiments. And I'm going to show you one of the experiments now. There was two ways of doing this. One, you can place a piece of paper or card on the floor with a pencil and see if the spirit world can write for you. Or, like John would like to see if they can go a bit further, is to get two slates, put a small bit of batten wood around the edges, and then place with inside a piece of paper and a little bit of charcoal. Lock it so there's no way it can be open, and say to the spirit world, what would you like to say, or what would you like to write? And one of them, when they opened up the box, they got this writing. Now, I don't know how clear it will come on camera. So it says, my beloved friends, all is going to plan, Alexander, dated the 12th of the 11th, 1991. And it's written on back of a cereal box. Could you imagine back then, they thought, oh, we'll just put a cereal box in, it'll be fine. And then to have the importance that the spirit world were able to write in their handwriting. And this communication came from Alexander Bell. And he was one of the parts of the communicators to establish communication between our world and theirs. And they very rapidly got even further. So this one says, this is from Charlie Carter, the little boy that held my hand. Nuts and bolts are not my thing. I would rather have a slug of gin. And this little boy who was bitten by a rat and got blood poisoning used to pull on our hearts. So when he would manifest, he said, I died in my mother's arms, he would say, and we all go, ah. And he loved that bit of ah. And he used to say, I was bitten by a rat. And again, we would go, ah. And we said, well, how can we make it better? And he said, a bottle of gin would do. And we would bring in a bottle of gin and he would undo it and have a little gulp. And, or a little slog, as he would say. And we used to get a spirit child absolutely drunk. And we were allowed to in those days, because in the olden days, we were allowed to drink with the spirit world. And we would have sometimes a bottle of alcohol with a series of glass, and the spirit world will pour a glass to certain people, especially if you've just had communication from your son and you need something to calm your nerves. Dolly, the drag queen, would manifest and walk over like the hostess with the mostess and hand you a glass of gin, a glass of brandy, and you're able just to calm your nerves. You would do a public seance, you would have the private seance, and then you have the home circle. And each sitting was different, but we all had the same thoughts. Allow the message to go to the greatest need. And for you who are sitting, who are budding mediums, remember when you sit and you sweep that path and clear that step, you're sitting to heal the need of those who are grieving, as well as healing the need of the spirit. Your voice can convince someone who's on the brink of doing something stupid because they're so bereft with grief, they're so smothered, and you saying, I have a voice here, and he just calls out mum, and he's gone micro machines, and that was the code from son to mother. In a brief moment, you have the ability to change someone's world. So we would put things out, and it's got the love of all the spirits And all those who come, Merry Christmas from Mr. Bell. And again, on the back of a chocolate cake box. Chocolate cake box was his writing there for you. So you don't have to have buckets of cash to do the experiments. You could just have a cereal packet or a box or something, and you just cut it out and you place it within the seance room. And you can ask the spirit world, are you able, through the love that we give, to make contact? We used to get many times with Colin, especially, that you would put in sealed cards, and the spirit world would go over to the sealed card, and bear in mind the lights were off completely and the medium hadn't touched it, and would tell us what we had written. But then when you open it up, there will be the signing of your mother's name in her handwriting, or a little message from your son. So all those times you sit and you think nothing happens, you don't know that you are preparing for what is to come. And Colin was no exception to that. He used to get frustrated and he used to lose his temper. But then there was people like myself and others who would simply slap him back, and he would then do his job. Dolly, who was one of the communicators, gave us strong guidance. And being young, and Colin wasn't just a medium, he was a friend. And having that opportunity to sit privately with him and have the voice of Dolly, who can only be described as an hysterical bag of laughter being handed to you. Dolly was a snow day. It just made everything right. And Dolly's real name, funny enough, is called Daniel. And I have a Daniel. And I said to my friend in the spirit world, are you the same? He said, no, I don't dress up like a woman. He put it as bluntly as that. But when Dolly would manifest, she would also manifest in her gowns, in her heels, and with her wigs and makeup and fingernails if needed. Or she would have gloves on, depending on what took her fancy. She used to materialize with stiletto heels, and you would hear the little heels walk across the wooden floor. And sometimes that you were allowed to feel her face. If you were allowed to place your hands up, she would then place her face within your hands. Colin would have stubble, but Dolly had silky skin, smoothed facial features. Dolly would have hair up to the gods, massive, or down to the floor, again, however she felt. But Dolly would bring our loved ones. But when I was really depressed, Dolly manifested and came over and sat on my knee. And as bony as her bum was, she used to come and whisper and tell us stuff that would bring me hope and smiles. She used to be brutal as well, and used to not swear in the modern way, but say stuff in the old tongues. And she would manifest sometimes with a child in her arms. And she used to make reference to the Von Trapp family and other things when she used to come out with babies and say, I think this one belongs to you. And the mother would hold her baby or sit on the floor and hear her child talking and playing while Dolly went off to speak to someone. Dolly was incredible, and I'm not allowed to have favorites, but one person that I'm absolutely dying to meet again will be Dolly. And you who are listening to these words will have your own ones that you can trust without a shadow of a doubt. Colin had an army of people around him from the spirit world. His main voice was Magnus, then Dolly, then there was Charlie, there was the Mandarin, there was Daphne. There was Alan Chewin, that he used to come and stutter and help us to understand communication. We would have extraordinary people, but every sitting we would have a loved one. And some of you who are accustomed to seances would know that to have a loved one is a joy, and it's rare. But Colin would have 3 to 4, maybe 5 to 6 loved ones, but there'll be 30 of us there in the room. And that means possibly 24 of us didn't have that loved one communication. So he would always have the opportunity to bring someone that was known to all of us. One time it was Mahatma Gandhi, who we used to call Bapu, and everyone could take a piece of Bapu away. And one time Bapu would walk out the cabinet and call out, my son, and place his hands above my head. You would feel his bony fingers and his stubby nails, and he was shaking, and he'd do this. And as he lifted his hands away, these petals just fell as apples, which was lovely until the light came on and the floor was covered in petals. And Colin said, who's going to clear this up? And there's me on the floor, filling my pockets with whatever I could pick up. Or there was times that we were allowed to bring in toys, especially for Christmas, for our spirit children and spirit friends. And we would bring in silly string and party poppers, and you would hear this bang, boom, and then the light would come on, and there'll be a lovely man called Chris Hunt, and he looked like Marge from The Simpsons, you know, with the hair up high, where they'd done silly string all in his hair. And that was amazing. And we would sit next to each other and be absolutely covered. And the children would roar. And that's what it was about. It was helping the children. Sometimes the children would say that their mummy and daddy are sad, and we would ask for their names, and they'll say mummy and daddy. And you're like, okay, do you have a grandparent there with you? And they say yes. And the grandparent would then give the name of the mum and dad, and there'll be pieces of paper on the floor. And we would say to the spirit children, if you want to write something for mummy and daddy or draw it, do it. And we would get the name and the address of the person. We would then send them a covering letter with the drawing, with the recording, and say, if you can, make your way to Haywards Heath and Colin will sit for you. We thought this was a service that it was absolutely extraordinary, but then we must consider certain people may not find that so welcoming. But if the spirit world had asked it, we must trust and know that they know what their loved one needs at that moment. We had so many extraordinary people materializing through Colin while he rapidly developed. And on one occasion, they were able to illuminate their hand. So you would sit there and all of a sudden you would see this hand as solid as you and I, and it would just float by itself. And then you would have one single foot walking across, and the hand would float that way and the foot would go that way. And I remember seeing this hand turn and come towards me, and you're not allowed to move properly, so you can bring your hand up to scratch and put your hand back down. And as this hand was coming towards me, I was doing all of this trying to dodge this hand, and this hand came over again without fumbling, got my head and just ruffled my hair, and it was the hand of Dolly. And Charlie Carter said I could do one better. So he said, well, what do you want to do, mate? He said, I'm going to do this. And as he put his hand up, his whole hand looked like it caught fire, and they were burning off the excess ectoplasm, and you're able to see his hand waving back at you, which was a different size to the hand that floated and Colin's hands. There was another time, and hopefully I'm boring you, but I'm getting into my flow now. I'm getting excited, and I hope you're getting excited with me, that we were sitting and Dolly said, I want to try something. And the power was just right. And you looked up to the ceiling and you saw balls of light just appearing. Now, it wasn't a torch, because a torch would have then illuminated the whole lot. But this was balls of light just moving around the ceiling, all around each other. And we said, what are you doing? And he said, we're creating the light. The power's right. And we got excited. And the more excited we got, the brighter the light became. And a voice came out of Magnus and said, enough. And the lights collapsed. And they were told off because they decided to do an experiment rogue without telling the other people in the spirit world what they were about to do. So they got told off, and they weren't allowed to carry on talking that evening. And Magnus had to step in. When I was sitting with Colin and watching him unfold his wonderful ability and seeing him in the trance states, he would take his jewelry off because his hands would swell and he would feel uncomfortable. And sometimes when you wore metal, as the power pulsed through, the metal would heat up. He took his ring off, his Star of David, and his watch, and linked all three together. He placed them next to his most precious things, which were his cigarettes. And in those days, that the smokers were allowed to smoke in the room we were sitting. And now I was a non-smoker, and that didn't please me at all. So I would sit there, and he had these cigarettes there, and we turned down the lights. We didn't turn them off, we turned them down. And his hands were in his lap, and Magnus came, and his hands came up into a prayer position like this. And Magnus delivered the most extraordinary speech and answered our questions. And at the end of it, Colin returned after about an hour to an hour and a half. And he reached for his cigarettes. That's all we used to do, first of all. When he come back, he'd go get his cigarettes, and then he would place on his jewelry. He got his cigarettes, lit one up, and everyone else was lighting up when they wanted to. And that plume of smoke was starting. And he went like that, and his cigarettes were next to his cigarettes, his jewelry wasn't there. And he said, "Where's my jewelry?" And we called him Carl instead of Colin. But Carl, Carl, they were there. None of us moved, and the light stayed on. He said, "Did that?" No, nothing moved. And he said, "Where is my jewelry?" And nothing. And he put his hand out, and he said, "Charlie, bring it back." And there was a shimmer of light, like a flick. And out of midair came his ring, his watch, and his Star of David, and landed in his hand. And when it landed in his hand, I went, "See you next week." And I just stood up and walked out. And thinking about it now, why did I do that? But I could not believe what had just happened. And this is the trouble that you'll face when you are facing something like this. Did this really happen? Yes, I saw it. Did everyone else see it? Yes. Did they react like you? No, they saw it as normal. And I had to get on my train because I lived 5 minutes away, got on the train, and I was really fighting it. I walked to my house. I used to be, again, trendsetter. I used to have my key on a bootlace around my neck, pulled out the key, put it in the door, opened it up. And my mum was in the hallway, and she said, "You all right?" And yeah, I went straight over to the drinks cabinet, poured myself a drink. Thank you very much. And night. And that was it. Because I could not rationalize. Did this happen? Yes, it did. Is it possible? Yes, it is. And that's something you're going to have to get used to, ladies and gentlemen. Those who are mediums, you're going to have to get used to it did happen. Yes, this is happening. Yes, I am doing this. So don't go away and work at it. Go away and get used to it. And through these wonderful experiences, I'm going to start jumping now, if I haven't done so already, that 2 doors down from Colin was David Thompson. And David Thompson was and is now a very fine physical medium. And I was very fortunate enough to know his wife incredibly well at the time, which was Bianca, and him, and he became very close friends, and I became godfather to his daughter, Sahara Rose. And I was allowed to sit with him, and I was allowed to experience his unfoldment, which was completely different to Colin's. Colin's, they had perfected the physical mediumship, and they were moving into this extraordinary proof of survival. And that's where the seances were going very quickly. David's was still at the phenomenal base, meaning there's a lot of things which were going on. And I mean, not just a little thing, a lot. Hands coming through the wall. The first seance that I attended, which was in York Road, near Tilgate Park, Eve and Gordon's house, his spirit child called Timothy Boo ran through one wall. You heard him run across the ceiling and then run through the wall. He ran through the wall between me and a lady called Brenda. And as he ran through, he pushed me forward. And I felt, even though my back was against the wall, touching shoulders, I felt this person go through. Brenda felt it. And then he ran in the ring and went, ha ha. And then he carried on. And meeting Timothy Boo, who used to call me Snotty Scotty. He said, Snotty Scotty. I said, yes, you little bugger. And he'd say, here's my finger, here's my thumb, here's my fist, and here it comes. And he would punch me in the stomach very gently, like a child would do. And in those days, we were allowed to tap back. So I started doing this and thinking, I'm not hitting anyone. So as he's hitting me, I felt his hand, felt his wrist, but there was nothing else attached to him. It was just a fist, nothing else. Again, fine specimen man I am, I scream. My bum kind of eats the seat because I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing here. And the voice came back and laughed. And in those days, we were asked, what would you like us to do? And someone from the spirit world started to materialize and said, would you like to see White Soaring Bird's headdress? And we said, yes, please. You know, this is different. This is new. And all of a sudden, White Soaring Bird materialized. And as he materialized and as he started to hoop and holler, you started to see the illumination of White Soaring Bird, including his headdress, which was red tips and brown feathers. And it was extraordinary. And when he bowed down as he was hooping, and because the room was small, you felt the feathers brush your face, and he never headbutted anyone. So even though his head was bouncing around like anything, and doing this wonderful sun dance, then all of a sudden you saw what you needed to see and then dissolved. When the light came up, I remember that I was wearing a brown top, just like this, but it was brown. Matched the colors of the feathers that I saw. The lady just to the side of me was wearing a red knitted top. Red that matched the tips of the feathers. When I looked down, I had bleach marks through my top, including holes. And one of the holes, and as we're all adults here, was directly across my nipple area. And I had bleach marks through in this hole right here. And I was furious because I didn't bring a coat and I had to catch the train home. So there I am on a train with my nipple hanging out and with bleach marks on there. And this was my favorite top. This was the top that had moved me from my goth black stage to a sense of color. And I would always wear this when we were sitting. And so I was angry. And when I looked at the lady in the red top, she had holes all the way through, but hers was just kind of down her arms and across the bit here. And I said to William, who was the voice of his main control, William Charles Cadwell, I said, William, let's talk. Last time we sat, my top was destroyed. Seances are supposed to be constructive, not destructive. What happened? William quite plainly said, I asked you, would you like to see White Soaring Bird's headdress? You said yes. So we needed to take the fibers, the dye, the color from your top and imbued it within the ectoplasm. And that's how we created it, through self-illumination. So he said, maybe next time when we say to you, would you like? You say yes, but at what cost? What do you need? Which then made us start to train ourselves that when the spirit world wanted something, yes, but what does that cost? What would that be? Do we have to bring in flowers so that the spirit world were able to take the color pigmentation from the petals and put it within the ectoplasm instead of taking fibers from our clothes? And we started to learn with the spirit people how to bring in objects that's going to assist the demonstration, not hold it back. There was a time when David was taken through the brick wall along with Colin. David's one we thought was more funny because it was Hunt the Medium. So can you allow your imagination just stretch a bit further if it hasn't done so already? And we're in a small room, very small room, one door in, same door out. This door is locked and sealed, a chair in front of it, a curtain round it. The medium is tied by wrists and by ankles. The seance has been conducted, and we were instructed to bring proceedings to a close after we sang a song. We sang a song. Seance comes to an end. We would call David, Dave, David, Dave. No response. The light slowly came up. Curtain pulled back. There's no chair, no medium. The key is taken out the pocket, unlock the door. Light has come into the seance room. So during the seance, if that door had opened, we would have seen the crack of light. And we played the game called Hunt the Medium. So some of us ran to the kitchen, some of us ran to the toilet downstairs because we needed to toilet. Some of us were looking everywhere. And all of a sudden, upstairs, the security light came on and we were able to see outside by the washing line. There was David tied to the chair. The washing line was through the arm of the chair. So on this night, it's raining. So there's David, gagged, tied. Neighbours must have thought it was hysterical. So we've gone, there he is, running down, cut him free. To get the chair out, we had to collapse the washing line, then lift it up over and back down. David was furious. But then I remember, and in those days I was a bit bold, because I used to like rubbing the salt in, because me and him had this brotherly respect for each other. Colin had been taken through a wall previously. And David said, anything he can do, I can do better. And it was a good friendship that they had. So when he sat, the spirit world see to David's needs if they could do one better. So I then piped up and said, anything you can do better. And it reminded David that it's not about the competitiveness. It was about sitting and relaxing and allowing the circle to provide him power so that he can make mistakes or make progression. Another occasion where I've heard David scream like anything, and we were in Australia. And it was the first time I've ever been to Australia. And David was doing a very small seance for a group of friends in the basement. Never been outside of England at all. And my first flight was to Australia. And he had wound me up on the plane because when I'm nervous, I laugh. And I was laughing through the whole of the flight. Anyway, we get to Australia and we set up the room and he's in the corner. I tied him down, made sure he was nice and secure, got him comfy. Do you need a cushion? Before he said yes or no, we've already ripped the cushion away from him, just made him more comfortable in his wooden chair. And as he was sitting there and as the curtain was drawn around him and we sat down, he went, oh, you're right there, Dave. Oh, there's something moving. I said, well, yeah, of course, they're starting the phenomena earlier. And we were all like, oh, yeah, it's fine. He goes, no, seriously, there's something moving. And I said, no, it's fine. And he's gone, no, there's something moving. Get me out. Stop. And he started screaming. And I thought, well, this is not a normal behavior. And so we turned on the lights. We drew back the curtain and there, crawling up him, was a huntsman spider. And if anyone knows a huntsman spiders are like spiders with attitude. They're huge. They're about the size of my hand. And it was crawling up the side of him. And well, I almost blacked out because I can't deal with spiders. And we were able to get the spider out. And that was done. We sealed up the room again. Curtain, And we started to sing. And during the seance, we kept on feeling something doing this, which was okay, yeah, the phenomenon's taking place. We can get touches from midair. And we were like, well, welcome, friend. And you heard Timothy laughing. And we're like, oh, we've just been touched. Welcome, friend. Oh, something's on my face. Yeah, welcome, friend. And you heard him laughing throughout the whole experience. At the end of the seance, the voice came and said, it wasn't us. And we thought, didn't put anything to it. And when we turned on the light, I didn't realize cockroaches can fly. And we had this flying cockroach, which was coming round. And so when it landed on our faces like this, I'm like, oh, welcome, friend. Oh, it's lovely being touched. It wasn't, it was a flying cockroach. And so in some ways, they got their own back on us. But I had to say that was probably the only second time I've ever been nervous within the seance room. But David's again accelerated very, very quickly. And on another occasion, when we were sitting, they wanted to prove matter through matter. And it's where they take an object and they either link the objects together, which are solid, or they do something extraordinary. And this time they took a bracelet and put it through the arm of the chair. It was a solid bracelet, can't be undone. And they took it from the sitter and then they put it through the arm of the chair. This arm of the chair was solid. And the only way we could get this bracelet off if we took a saw and cut through the arm of the chair and lift it out. We were promised by the spirit world we didn't have to do the saw, but the bracelet would have to remain in the seance room for 2 days, because that's when his next seance was going to be. So as we were sitting there and we saw this bracelet, which was put on 2 days beforehand, the person was in the room. And the wonderful Timothy Boo said, I think I need to give this back to you. And without any effort whatsoever, handed the same bracelet which had gone through the wooden arm of the chair. You may say to me, Scott, why do they do that? And I've asked this question so many times, and the same response, because we can. Quite simply, you provide us the opportunity, we can do this for you. Now, I have touched on phenomena, but I need to also touch on the many voices of people that we recognize. Some who were friends, some were family. And there is nothing wrong being upset, in crying with joy when you hear someone have communication. I had a lady's father manifest at the Christmas time, and he ran out the cabinet and started saying coffee, 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 and grabbed his daughter and went coffee, coffee, coffee. And she said, yes, Dad, I know that's you. And he started to talk to her and he kept on going back to coffee, coffee, coffee. And we said to the lady, why does he keep calling out coffee? Does that mean something? And she said, yes, coming to the end of his life, he struggled to speak, but all he kept on saying was coffee, coffee, coffee. And so the evidence, first of all, was the memory of what he used to say. But what was also very apparent, the problem that he had, what took him to the spirit world, was just a memory. So when he came through, he just identified himself very, very quickly by saying coffee, coffee, coffee. But then he went on to full sentences and they were able to reminisce on good times. Another lady attended and her husband materialized. And I remember the husband saying, I'm so pleased that you didn't do it, but you got that guy to clean the patio. And this guy, her husband, had cancer, and the cancer was very progressive. And during this time, his only relief was to sit in the garden. But because he was going to the wheelchair, that they created a patio garden for him so he could sit out there, and the wheelchair was able to get through. But there was problems with 2 of the slabs which were uneven, and there was growth from moss and everything. And his wife was unsteady on her feet, and she was going to do the garden herself, but someone suggested try this person. I wonder where that suggestion came from, because the husband spoke about this man, spoke about how the garden was done and how he was pleased that everything was growing what he had planted, but he never got the full enjoyment from. And there was, simple communication like that, which meant not much to us, but everything to the person that was receiving it. And there's a side note, those who are mediums, never dismiss your evidence or dismiss the information that you're getting. It could be someone saying buttercup, and that could be a nickname, but your mind can then discriminate. I'm not saying that. Give me something else. You never know how your information will come. So we would have loved ones, we would have children. And one of the extraordinary ones that I sat with, and it was for Bianca, and I hope she doesn't mind me telling this story, but it's been written about on a few times, was that her son, Seth, passed to the spirit world quite quickly. And how it came about was that Bianca was pregnant with Seth, and her husband Brett and best mate Michael went out at New Year, and Brett and Michael were drinking heavily, and they were drinking Jack Daniels, and they got a cab back to the house, and they had parked on the other side of the road, and Brett had to help Michael out the car. And as he helped him out the car, and as they walked across and Bianca walked in front, a car came around the corner, struck both of them, and Michael was killed outright. Brett broke his back and became paralyzed, and Bianca, because she was under so much pressure, subsequently went into early labor, and there was complications, and this little tiny dot of the thing, Seth, was born, and he survived 9 days and sadly passed to the spirit world. Brett couldn't handle it, and Brett took his own life. And I would always hug Bianca because she would tell me the story and she wouldn't cry. And I said, how on earth do you survive? And she said, because I know my son, I know my husband, or my partner and my best mate are there. And one seance, out came from the cabinet was his voice calling out B, which was Bianca's nickname, which was given by Brett. B, and she said, is that you? And the voice responded and said, look what I've got, and placed within her arms this beautiful baby, and it was baby Seth. And Seth at that time was small, and she said, I've got a small child, and the child was moving, making noises. And then Brett would go quiet, and Bianca was able to hold her child and say what she wanted to say, and kiss him and squeeze him a little bit tighter than you would normally do. And then Brett would take the child back, and week in, week out, year on, year out, Seth started to grow. And one of the last seances that I was privileged enough to hear Seth, you heard an excitable little boy going, Mommy, 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 look what I've done at school. And the curtains opened, and there was this little child running over towards Bianca. And she said, well, hello, hello, baby, or however she greeted him. And she sat on the floor and played with Seth. And she had this, it was so natural, it was so normal. And people like me, I was sobbing like a baby, sobbing because this was real. This was a moment where, oh my God, this is real. And Seth said, look what I've done, look what I've done. He handed her a piece of paper, and it was a drawing out of crayons, and it had Mummy, Daddy, and Daddy Dave. And there was a cat involved, which was Mistral. And it was handed to her, and she was able to keep it. We had no paper in that room. David was searched before he sat, so that the spirit child had made this for his mother. And Brett said, give your mum a kiss. And Bianca kissed Seth, and Seth gave his mum a squeeze, and Brett leant in and kissed her and said, "I always love you, B," and walked away. And that was the last I ever heard of them. And I spoke to Bianca not just recently, and we were reminiscing of times, and she said, "I know that my son is there. I know that my love is there." And obviously she's got a husband who understands what she's been through and supports her in every sense of the way. And it made us investigate, ladies and gentlemen, that children do grow up in the spirit world. And you may say, how would I recognize them? They see you every day. They recognize you. And I think when they start to shout and call out your name, when you see them and when it's your time, you will know. You will always know. So don't think you won't, you will. This is the frustrating thing, ladies and gentlemen, as I bore you even further, is that I've been so blessed to see this and witness this. I'm simply screaming, I want to share more with you. And part of my own progression, and those who are sitting for physical mediumship or the trance states, hopefully you'll be able to relate to some of the things I tell you, that you will feel peculiar. You will feel this unusual sensation taken over as you are blending with the unseen. And you become the voice. But as you progress with your stages of phenomena, the phenomena may be aggressive, it may be soft, it may be all over the place, and they may experiment with you. And again, I want you to believe what you want or discard what you wish, because I have no reason to lie to you. And if you want to know if I'm lying, if you know about the auric field, when someone's auric field shrinks, they're lying. If they're telling the truth, it should stay where it should be. If they're excited, it should expand. So when you see your bank manager and says, "Mr. Milligan, lovely to see you," and you can see the auric field really tight, you think, no, you're not. What do you want from that? But I asked Darren earlier today, I said, what can I share about my own unfoldment? And he said, tell them the time when they used to turn you upside down in the chair. And the spirit people, so if you can imagine, I'm tied down. The only reason I'm tied down is because I quite like it. There's nothing to do about the mediumship whatsoever. But no, I'm tied down, tied by my wrists, tied by my legs. Sometimes I'm tied with the belt buckles as well, around the back of the chair, tied down, and I've got limited movement. And the spirit world said, "Do you trust me?" And I said, "Of course I do. Of course I trust you. Just don't kill me yet, please." And you would move with that trust. And on one occasion in Home Circle, they wanted to experiment, and they would count or get the circle to count 5 on, 5 off. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, light goes on for 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, light goes off for 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they instructed us to do it until they told us not to. So the light was off, and when the light was on, the chair had started to move in the light, and it started to be dragged towards the sofa with me in it. It got to the sofa, and a lady called Lorraine was sitting on the side on the sofa, and they had taken me and the chair over the sofa in the light and rolled me down and then rolled me up again, and they tipped the chair upside down next to the wall, and they started to slide the chair up the wall. John Austin shouted, and we have it on recording, "Enough, you'll break his neck." And the chair fell from the wall back over onto its right way up, and then rotated backwards between Lorraine, not hitting her at all, back towards the cabinet. And we were asked why, and they said they wanted to get me used to light. And for many years, and part of the progression was to try and get me into light. And we had some wonderful photographs, including a video recording of a short snippet of the seance where you see the ectoplasm starting to undulate and move. And we were doing wonderful things. But then a lady came to me when I was demonstrating and said, "I've seen you a few times now, but this isn't bringing back my son. This isn't what I've come for the voice of my son. And it made me then really consider where the development is going. Are we going for phenomena, or are we going for the evidence of life after life? Will this get a mum up in the morning, or will this get mum up in the morning? And when we started to move towards the voice, the light started to dim and we slipped back into darkness, and they started to bring the voice of the loved one. I want to ask all of you, as I become a little bit stern and have a sip of my drink from the Nightmare Before Christmas. If you sit with anyone like me, what would be the purpose of lifting the trumpet? What will be the purpose of banging the drum? What is the purpose of producing objects which you can simply buy in store? What is the purpose of it? Or if you sat there and the control says, I've got a boy here who had leukemia, and he talks about the Red Lion pub where you celebrated his life after his funeral, and someone says, yes, I recognize it, and the voice comes out and you hear the whisper, James, and then someone says that was his name, and then the voice of the son starts to talk. The person here starts to heal. That's what we do. That's what we go for. That's the purpose. Not something that is going to insult your intelligence. But it's up to you, because what you give is what you're going to get back. If you want the phenomena, that's what you're going to get. If you sit for the spirit world, you're going to get much, much more back. It will take time. You'll pull your hair out. You'll cry. You'll laugh. You'll spit your dummy out. But your soul has told you this is what you're here to do. You can't deny it, no matter how you wander and how you go. If you're here to do this duty, nothing on earth will change it. There is so much more I could tell you and bore you even further. And you'll never reach your destination. And that's the great thing about the development. You'll constantly evolve. Remember what I said to you. We're here to sweep the path clear. And if we can sweep it clear and be humble and allow the mighty force of the eternal spirit and all those wonderful souls that come along with it, they'll introduce you to some wonderful people. You've got Dolly, the drag queen, with his friend Fat Bunty, who was the 23-stone drag queen. And so when you have Dolly and Bunty talking together, Dolly would say it's a hoop and a stick, because Dolly was very slim and slender. And then there was Bunty in all her glory. You would then have Charlie Carter, the little spirit boy who was bit by a rat. You've got Magnus, who was the voice of so loving and so genuine and so knowledgeable. You then had the wonderful White Soaring-Bird, Dr. Offington, Dr. Theobald Solinsky, Honest Jack, who would give you the honest answer to anything, who would come and say, Scott, my boy. You go, yes, Jack. He goes, why were you doing this? And you're like, how did you know? He said, because I was watching you. He said, stop that right now. And what happened was that I decided to go to the piercers, and I wanted a piercing, but I wanted no one to know, and I got my nipple pierced. Haven't got it in anymore. I got infected and went really badly. I didn't listen to Honest Jack, but I was making my mind up, and I thought, I'm going to do it. But my dad didn't know. He still didn't know up until his death. He now knows. And I had it done. Didn't tell anyone. And honest Jack would say, I told you not to, but you did it anyway. And he would then tell me off. He said, nothing good will come of it. I said, oh, it'd be fine. It'd be lovely. No, I got a massive infection, huge infection. You know, got really bad blood poisoning. I was so ill, but I had to do it without my parents knowing. So it was like, oh. So honest Jack, and then you would have Arthur, you would have other people, and then you have your own team that you fall in love with, and nothing on earth will move you from them. You'll never win an argument with them because they always come back spiritual, even though you say, well, but it'll be my, no, they will never tell you what you should do, but they will always come back with something much more deeper. And you're like, oh, damn it. So, because I've bored you for a little while, would you like to sit? Sandra's waving at me. Are you okay?
Oh, well, we had a comment and we had a question.
Okay,
and I thought, okay, the comment comes from George. He says, hi, Scott. This sounds very similar to the stories that my mom and dad told me about Alec Harris's circle. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, as you may or may not know, that Alec Harris is one of my favorites. Now, there is a book which was written by his wife, They Walk Amongst Us. It's the only book I have ever read in my life because I'm dyslexic. It took me ages, but I got there. But luckily for me, that during the seances, Alec would materialize and tell us some of the stories. And did you know that during one of his seances, a gentleman materialized and asked Louis, can I trouble you for a piece of paper and a pencil? By all means. He wrote a letter, folded it up and put it in an envelope. Can I trouble you for some money for a stamp, please? The sisters went in their pockets and pulled out the money for the stamp. The spirit person said thank you and disappeared. A few minutes later, the spirit person came back to thank everyone for their generosity and went, oh my goodness, I forgot your change, and disappeared again and then reappeared and gave them the change for the stamp. Could you imagine in the post office? You're sitting on the post office and then you see this person looks awfully white and say, no, you don't look well. Oh, could you mail this for me? And there's money for the stamp. How awesome would that be to have Alec in the cabinet, someone sitting next to him and seeing the husband disappear? Lou, your husband's disappearing. She said, oh, don't worry, he'll turn up. He was found outside. The control Rowan said, go outside, wake him up and bring him back in. And they did. They found him on the doorstep, brought him back in, and they carried on the seance. Up to 40 plus loved ones, all one after the other, materializing. How incredible is that? That's what would really interest me, wouldn't it? What would you do to get that? Would you be prepared to sit for all those years and potentially have nothing in between? And then finally, just before you die, someone is able to get through. Could you imagine it? It'd be worth living eternity for. To have just a moment of having a voice that you recognize and see them there as clear as you and I. Wouldn't that be lovely? There was a husband who attended Alec's seance, and he came in all suited and booted, because in the olden days, when I was young, we had to dress up. Now, I always thought I was good in black attire, and I once wore a crushed velvet black suit with a purple shirt with a big collar, so my collar was out here. I would poke anyone's eyes out in the dark. If I turned like this, it stabbed the person next to me. And I thought I looked good. I had black shoes, white socks, black velvet trousers, purple shirt, crushed velvet suit. And I sat there and I was Prince Poppycock. And I sat there with all my glory because I was told to wear my best. And this spirit child walked out and said, Mummy made curtains out of this. And she was stroking my jacket and it deflated my ego. But anyway, this husband had worn his suit and he had a bunch of flowers, which was put in a vase to the side of him. And the seance was being conducted. Loved one after loved one was coming out, and coming to the end of the sitting, this man was becoming more nervous and more itchy. And all of a sudden, one of the last materializations was his wife. As she walked out the cabinet, he gasped and he went and grabs the flowers and went straight over and handed it to his wife. His wife took the flowers and then they slow danced in the middle of the room. And he said, and whispered to her things only private for them. And then all of a sudden the wife started to dissolve because her time was done and she had to go back. And he said, oh my darling, and he cupped her face as she was just falling away. He said, I love you, my darling, I love you, my darling, and gave her a kiss. And then she just evaporated and the flowers had gone. How extraordinary would that be? How amazing could it be? And all it starts from is by sitting for the power. So would you like for just a few minutes to sit in the stillness and allow me just to lead you to the steps of your development? But it's up to you to do the work. It's up to you to put the effort in, because I can't make you a medium. I wish I could. I wish I could get fairy dust and go poof, and there you are. But I just want you just to sit. And during this blending, if the unseen wish to speak, then allow a voice to come. If it doesn't, we'll just carry on talking. Is that all right for you and I? So, Sandra, is the music all right?
It certainly is. I'm
So,
going to start playing it.
Thank you.
Let me know if you can hear it there, Scott. Yes. Okay.
I can hear it. Thank you so much. So, for those who don't know or think I'm peculiar, I want you just to close your eyes and just allow yourself this moment. I would like you just to listen, not only to my voice or the rhythm of the music, but what else do you hear around you? As the rise and the fall of your breath just begins to calm your mind. Some of you may hear the birds outside, or the traffic in the distance. Some may be aware of the setting of the sun, with the sense of peace. Whatever you hear, however you feel, I want you to stay in this moment as you allow your body, this time of rest, this time of peace. As the rise of the breath slowly falls with the silence, as you drink the atmosphere, what else do you feel when you allow your thoughts to find their place of rest? Have you ever seen when the autumn leaves fall, how they kiss goodbye to the branch, and carried by the breath of the wind? Have you ever felt that sense of peace when you walk and feel the ground below your feet walking away from fear and doubt? As your mind becomes free from the fears of what is to come, we may feel a sense of sadness when the sun sets, but we feel a sense of peace when we see the stars that have always been and will remain just outside our reach. But within their light, we stand. And as you let go, like the leaf that falls, as you slowly find peace, the power within, like the waves that touch the shore, can hide the marks of the past. There is always love. That is offered to you from both worlds. So just remain in that peace, in that stillness for a moment. For whatever is to come is merely the bend in the road.
Be gentle with one another. Be gentle with yourselves, for there is much fear that has gripped your world. Many stories have been misunderstood by those who tell and speak the lies. The greatest lie is this word called death, as death is not the villain of the story. It is the ones who proclaim to know what happens. For the eternal sleep is only for the physical body. The true treasure is released from the garment. That those who you love, those who you may weep for, live now within the world that awaits you, free from the shackles of time, free from the pains of life, or man's inhumanity to man. Be kind to those who continue to walk in the direction of fear. For you to give your warmth to those who feel alone. For those who feel the stir of our world. Let us use your hands to heal. Let us use your voice to carry the benign message that we cannot die. The only way we die to your world is when we are forgotten. For all who are here, you think often of those who have stepped in front of you, and therefore we live forever within your minds and upon your hearts. So many of you find comfort to go where our bodies lay. And as you stare, we stand with you, trying to lift your gaze so that you can stare into our eyes and know that your treasure is not buried. It has not been melted down, but we live with you, for you, and try wherever possible to make ourselves known, to lift you from your sadness so that you can find peace and find the strength to continue to walk your path with the joys of life. And when you are to speak, you speak fondly. And don't allow the final moments of their lives to overshadow the many years that they have had, walking by your side, holding you close, and sharing the love for one another. It is hard for one to conceive that our world is the next step for all of you. But you carry within your consciousness a place that becomes your reality. For if you enjoy to walk in arm on a summer's day, that becomes the reality. There is no shadow within our world. The shadow comes from all of you. With fear and misunderstanding, as we are not specters or phantoms. We are people like you, born in a different time and survived death. But we do not abandon you. We do not turn our back. We turn to face you and take you by your hand and steady your way. And if we can, we remind you that if you have loved, our love for you will never perish, but it will only grow and blossom. Remember, my friends, that sometimes the flower will wilt and discard its petals. The seed will fall and be hidden, but life will come. We may have fallen in your world, but we rise. We rise together in unity and love and respect of all life, no matter who or what you are. For if you carry titles, and if that is pleasing for you, if you do the work by sow the crops, then if it is pleasing for you, for we do not turn, we do not bow. We meet each other with mutual respect, and in love and in peace. For these words are meant for all, no matter where you feel you are. Our world is here, giving the support and love for all of you. You may deny us, you may turn your back, but we are the shadow that will never be forgotten. And we are patient. For if we cannot remind you today, we will remind you tomorrow. As time now fails and the candlelight is spent, I leave you with the blessings of your world and the love of eternity. Good day to you, my friend.
Good day, Eric. Thank you so much.
When you move your mind, however that may be, it should never exhaust you when you work with your power and you work with this intelligence. Because as you step within that stream, you'll be saturated by its power. And as you step out of it, you'll bring a bit with you. So those who are developing, the exhaustion may come from you misunderstanding your buildup of your awareness. But whenever someone does trance, it should always leave you empowered. The only thing I would say to you is, because I'm used to working for a little bit longer, you may have noticed it took me a little longer to settle, and I'm still settling, and then he starts to release his influence, and therefore I start to move back, and that's where I become a little bit frustrated, because I'm comfortable and now I'm having to come back, and I want to go a bit further. Because when you sit, you and I, it's like an addiction. You want to go back for another fix. You want to go back to feel their love. And that's why when you sit for the spirit world, you don't sit a couple of days. It becomes addictive, and then it becomes part of your nature. I've always said development is like going to the gym. Could you imagine me going to the gym? Not at all. The only time I go to the gym is to roll underneath someone doing press ups, and you might as well have a laugh at it. But when you decide to go on the gym, you have this excitement. I'm going to do this. It's going to be good for me. It's going to be well for me. And you'll start working, and that enthusiasm turns to, oh my God, this is actually difficult. Oh my God, this is exhausting. Oh my God, I can't do this. But then if you push beyond it, you'll start to feel that your body wants it more. And that's what your development's like. You'll start to work at it, and then you feel you can't do it. But then all of a sudden it becomes as natural as breathing in and out. So you may feel frustrated. You may feel lost in your development. Stop going here, there, and everywhere. Stand still and close your eyes and reach to the spirit world and ask them how you should sit, how you should work, how you should represent. You may not get the answers today, but what you've done is you said to the spirit world, I'm listening. And that's one thing I would say to you. Through all the wonderful things I've experienced and seen with my own eyes and felt with my hands, I saw the results of the efforts that other people have put into developing Colin. You don't hear about the times where things go wrong. You don't get told about the times when the medium is ill and they can't sit for 6 months. Or John having the stroke and being out of action for over a year. You get to experience the results of the success. But remember, part of the journey is the highs and lows, and enjoy it and have fun with it. Make mistakes. I've made many. I've got myself into terrible fights, but with fights only become bruises. But from those bruises we heal, and I may have healed in a different way, and I feel quite peaceful about it now. Corona has come, it kicked us in the gut. It's made a lot of people very unhappy. It's made a lot of families broken. The only thing it's made good is that we have reviewed life differently. And from Corona, I haven't been able, if Corona didn't happen, I wouldn't have been able to sit here and get to meet all of you and have me bore you for so long. Because I'm quite boring, really. Because you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from them. That's the whole idea. Don't worry about mediums. Go for someone else. I don't know why you want to be mediums. I really don't. But can I just share with you a lovely little thing about the Christmas tree seances, because they're my favorite, and I haven't been able to do them for 2 years, and it's terribly frustrating. At Christmas time, we support a charity called the Melzer House, which is a children's hospice, and it's a tradition in physical mediumship, we hold Christmas tree seances to thank the guides, thank the workers, and we would ask the spirit people, what do you want from us? Eric asked for chestnuts. When we asked for Frances, we said, what would you like? And she very cheekily said, booze and pills. And we said, we can't do that, but we can bring you in booze. And she said, no, I would like some roses. So we gave her roses. Daniel got a slug of whiskey, and Morningstar got tobacco. But then we would bring presents in for the spirit children. And what I like to think happens is that when we have a toy, we sit with it for a moment and put all the love that we have into the toy. We take it into the seance room, and the spirit children play with those toys. And hopefully they pour into that toy all their love. And then we give that toy to the hospice, so that these poor little things that are going through their darkest day have a toy to play with, which was touched by love, shared by love, and hopefully carry a bit of happiness along the way. We had this little boy called Norman, and I call him little, he isn't little at all, but he has a unique way of life, and he has Downs. And he puts the Downs on, Down syndrome, that is, he puts it on because then he gets free stuff. So when he comes in the seance, he puts it on and he gets free stuff. And we said to him, what do you want? And he said, cheese. Now, I'm allergic to cheese. As soon as I touch cheese, within 10 to 15 minutes, I'm on the toilet. Losing weight, lovely. So I can't eat cheese, but he does. So he will materialize and start munching on cheese, and whatever he takes is ingested into my bloodstream. And 1 year he wanted a train, so he got a train. And then he wanted these bad boys. He wanted roller skates. There's 2 of them, and he said, don't waste your money or anything like that, but because you've asked, this is what he wants. So we didn't know his size of feet, so we had to guess. So the circle brought him these skates. And during a seance at Banyan Retreat, there's a wooden floor, and he came through, plonked his skates on, and you heard him starting to zoom around the room and being very clumpy. And then you heard him fly into the Christmas tree, which was in the center of the room. The Christmas tree goes over, and you hear boof, ba-dumph. And then you hear this voice, I'm okay. And then up he gets and off he goes. Then he said, can I have a skipping rope? Because he wants to wear the boots and have the skipping rope at the same time. So we gave him that. Ba-dum, ba-dum, bang. I'm okay. And off he went again. The last seance he attended, he wanted a cape to go with these little zoomy things. So he has the cape now. And if you ever see a boy from the spirit world with the red cape, with the blue boots, that's Norman. But Norman once said, because we own an American diner, and we were struggling, really badly struggling. And he said to Darren, do you need help? And he said, yes. He said, would you like me to help? And Darren said, yes. And the next 2 days, we had all children coming in with additional needs. Some had Down, some had other cares, and our whole shop was full. And we loved it. You love the atmosphere, you love the excitement. And then the next day it happened again, and the next day it happened again. And we got really busy. And then the voice of Norman came out of the sitting again. He said, did I help? And we said, thank you. And he wanted to give back all what we had given to him. And in New Orleans, he walked out the cabinet and he was talking. And then he turned to this lady and said, your daughter's just like me. And the lady said, yes. And out from him came the voice of the daughter. And he works with children who have additional needs. who have got so much love they want to give, they're practically bursting. But then he took away the memory of the downs and he spoke as clear can be. And we said to him, why do you speak like this and also like that? And he said, simply, because I can get free stuff when I speak like this. He said, I carry this to help everyone, but also share with you that we may speak differently, we may act differently, we may look differently, but underneath it all, we're just like you. And little Norman will always stay very firmly tucked behind my heart where no one can hurt him. So that's his zoomy ones. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry if I bored you. I'm sorry if this is not what you wanted. But I said to you at the beginning, I don't know what we'll talk about, but hopefully it's what is needed to be shared and needed to be heard. So thank you to Sandra. Thank you to all of you who have supported me. And thank you so much to those who sat for me for all those years. And maybe one day I can repay all of you and give you something back, be it a word from your loved one, be it a simple memory. And Sandra said at the beginning about helping my kids, which are animals, and those who have donated. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because even though I know what I know and I do what I do, it's still scary when someone that you love and care for is under weather, and you feel so helpless. And then you take it to someone who knows everything and they said, yes, I can make it better, but it's going to cost you. And you think, oh, okay, help. But you don't care about that. You know, we can survive on baked beans. You know, we don't need to eat when we die. It's fine. You know, it must be so simple over there. But you just want to hold those little ones a little bit longer. And thank you for, letting me hold my little ones a little bit longer. So Sandra, have I bored them enough?
Well, Ryan says, tell Scott he is not boring. We love his stories. Thanks.
Oh, I didn't even go into the Leslie Flint's recordings. I've got Leslie Flint's recordings of his seances, which have never been played. And I've got a direct voice seance of a soldier killed in the American Civil War through the mediumship of Emily French, who died. And it's dated the 24th of June, 1912. And it was the home Rochester of New York, USA.
Oh my.
Is that so?
That's a big deal. You've got some treasures.
Oh
yeah.
See, I inherited these from John, and I've got boxes and boxes of them. Look how cool that is. Woo. And this is Dr. Cosmos Lang on the 1st of October 1960. Medium Mr. Flint. Sitters were Betty Green and Mr. S.G. Woods. Speed 3 3/4. And there it is there.
Wow.
So, I don't know what hidden treasures are on there. And we didn't even get into the seance trumpets. But clearly it's not what was meant to. Or the apples.
Well, as a bonus for our lovely friends that are with us, I will send you with the replay. Nobody can see that, Scott, because I'm talking. Let's see if we could put both of us here on the screen. There, you can show off while I'm talking. When I send you the guys and gals the replay, I'll put an extra little bonus video in there because I think it'll make a difference. I really do. And if you're watching some other time, some other way, you can send me an email or sandrachamplain@gmail.com. That's me. Scott, should we let people know what we do on Fridays and Mondays? Because it's not like this is the only time.
It's up to you if you want to bore them. If you want to bore
No.
them.
No. Well, 1 week from today, we start our February class. It's called Trance in the Altered States. And what do we do? You want to share?
Well, what day is it? Friday.
No, we're
Or
talking
Monday?
Monday. We're going
Okay.
a week ahead,
Oh.
exact same time as we started today.
See, now I'm out of my flow. I've become stupid, haven't I? So Mondays is an opportunity for myself to not become rusty, and it's an opportunity for me to share with you ideas of development, but actually take you through sitting for the power and sitting for you to blend with the spirit world in my ideas with influence of my friends. And for 2 hours, I hopefully will take you from a place that takes you to a place of knowing and feeling comfortable, so that you can just melt away into the arms of eternity. And those fears that we may have of how the blending takes hold, I hopefully will address those as we go along. But you won't become a trance medium overnight. You must sit and allow yourself the opportunity to be lost in the experience and find a sense of peace. So that's really Mondays.
Mondays are great. They're just over 2 hours. And if you can't join us live, they're all recorded. There's plenty of times with your eyes closed. And it's just very special. We've got some people that have been with us since we began May of 2020.
Repeat offenders.
Repeat offenders, and some people that come and go. And it's really lovely. And then on Fridays, we sit for healing, followed by hoping you jump in here. No,
sorry.
It's okay.
You can tell I'm distracted. Okay, so Fridays is again an opportunity for me to flex the muscles and get people to sit for healing for themselves, for their loved ones, for animals, and also to sit in the power. So it's a kind of sprinkle of a lot of things, and then end on the voice that works with me, whoever that may be, to come and address the group. And that's an opportunity for people to ask questions and engage with my friend, well, our friends really, because he's not only my friend, he's a friend to everyone. So that will be a trance demonstration.
Well, thank you very much. And they're lovely. And you can see a whole bunch of the past replays at our site, which is wedon'tdie.com. Easy to remember. If you go to the store page and you scroll down, you can see all the things that are coming up. With Scott, you can join us. We have our new classes starting this week also with Carrie and Phil, our psychic and mediumship and the way to your spirit. And we have a 5-hour sitting in the power on Sunday with them. It's magnificent, followed by our Sunday gathering, which is our beautiful, free online service filled with inspiration, smiles, and a medium demonstration in each and every one. Also on that page, you can join our Facebook group. You can listen to over 400 episodes of me interviewing people about the afterlife. Pretty exciting. And then be looking around the time of February 22nd, because Scott's friend and mine, Ms. Sonia Rinaldi down in Brazil, has been not only capturing voices of loved ones in the afterlife, but also now images. And so we are producing our very first feature film, and it will be released on February 22nd. And we're super excited about that. Super. So with that, everybody, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you so kindly for your donations towards all kinds of good things. So go to really good use. Thank you to our friends in the spirit world, of course. And don't fall under the illusion that you are alone, because packed in the world around you in this invisible space, you've got your loved ones. They are very, very real, and their love never dies. So again, our home base is wedon'tdie.com. We want to really thank you. And of course, my little brother, Scott, brother from another mother, thank you too.
Thank you. And thank you for everything. And keep well, keep safe, and go out and throw yourself in the snow.
Okay, everybody. Bye.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.